25 RS 1177 has to do with some cleanup regarding the education apprenticeship. Without objection, I'll introduce that. Moving on, we're going to start off with a hearing on Senate Bill 86, establishing the intercity passenger rail service program and making transfers annually to the Passengers Rail Service Revolving Fund. We'll start out with the revisor overview with David Weiss, Officer Revisor of Statute. David, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee. Senate Bill 86 would require the Secretary of Transportation to establish, implement, and administer an intercity passenger rail service program and develop and provide funding in order to connect Kansas by rail to other member states of the Midwest Interstate Passenger Rail Commission, Midwest Regional Rail System, the National Passenger Rail Network, and any other passenger rail service that's serving Kansas. The Secretary would provide funding for the cost of qualifying projects and provide operating support for Amtrak or any common rail carrier approved by the Federal Railroad Administration for the operation of such service. Senate Bill 86 also provides that beginning July 1, 2026, that'd be fiscal year 27, and each July through July 1, 2029, or fiscal year 2030, the Secretary, in consultation with the Director of the Budget, would determine the amount of unencumbered monies in the State General Fund, the State Highway Fund, or any special revenue funds of the Department of Transportation that may be used for the intercity passenger rail service program. The Secretary would then certify the amount from each such fund to transfer an aggregate amount, a total amount of $5 million in each of those fiscal years to the Passenger Rail Service Revolving Fund. And I can stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Questions? Seeing none, thank you, David. Committee, if you go to the bottom of your packet, Mike Stybing from Leavenworth County is going to be a proponent, and he's not going to be written. He's going to go in place of Karen Hiller, District 1 Councilman from Topeka, which is the second one from the bottom on the proponents. So no longer written. So if you want to put that in your stack accordingly, he will be a proponent in person right after Ty Drago. Okay, we'll start out with proponents. First proponent we have is Deborah Fisher Stout of the Northern Flyer Alliance. Deborah, welcome to committee.
Thank you, and good morning, Senator Billinger, and honorable members of the Ways and Means Committee. I just want to begin by sharing that I will be expanding on my written testimony rather than summarizing. So I'm here today in strong support of Senate Bill 86, a bill that will help Kansas compete for federal dollars to construct the Heartland Flyer extension, and will have transformative effects on our state's ability to attract students to its higher education system, as well as generate positive impacts in the broader economy. My arguments are grounded in rigorous economic impact studies and the pressing issue of university enrollment cliffs that we currently face. While I'm not speaking on behalf of any university, I have spoken with Wichita State University President Richard Mumma and his Chief of Staff, Andy Schlapp, and they have shared with me and members of the South Central Kansas delegation that the Heartland Flyer extension will benefit WSU in its efforts to recruit students from Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, and Colorado. Both universities and passenger trains, such as the Heartland Flyer extension, are economic engines. While economic impact studies consistently reveal that investing in higher education yields substantial returns for both individuals and the community, investing in passenger rail has similar positive effects. The Missouri Economic Impact Study of 2021 is an excellent example. The Missouri River Runner train between Kansas City and St. Louis generates $208 million in annual economic impact, $65 million in labor income, and $22 million in annual state tax revenues, which is $12 million more than the state pays to operate the train. So the state of Missouri would actually lose money if they defunded the Missouri River Runner. In conclusion, Senate Bill 86 is a critical piece of legislation that will not only bolster our higher educational system, but also stimulate economic growth, generate jobs, and attract people to our state. I urge the honorable members of this committee to support Senate Bill 86 and pave the way for a brighter future for Kansas. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And we're going to hold questions until the end, means we have so many proponents. Next, we will have Corey Davis, Kansas Department of Transportation. Corey, welcome, committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'm Corey Davis, Director of Multimodal Transportation and Innovation for KDOT. I'm here to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 86. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. KDOT is committed to the expansion of passenger rail services in Kansas. It provides a valuable mode of transportation for those that are not able or interested in driving or flying as their mode of transportation. Passenger rail service can act as a catalyst for economic development and business growth to further stimulate our economy. This service will provide an important linkage between Kansas and our partner states in Oklahoma and Texas, as well as the Southwest Chief, connecting Chicago and LA. KDOT's focus on passenger rail service expansion is illustrated through our advancement of a service development plan for the Heartland Flyer extension. This plan includes key elements that are operational analysis, capital investment needs, financial analysis, and an implementation plan. We are partnered with the Federal Railroad Administration in Oklahoma, as well as Amtrak, in investing in the Corridor ID program, where we were awarded $500,000 from the FRA to invest in the service development plan process. This program expands our partnership with FRA in advancing passenger rail in the state, and more specifically includes the Heartland Flyer in the project pipeline with FRA. We have successfully completed step 1 of the Corridor ID program and are nearing the completion of the service development plan. We will continue to work with FRA to advance through their programs, which are included in the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this program will support environmental review, preliminary engineering, and infrastructure improvements, and eventually operating costs. We are using the financial analysis, which is completed during this phase of the service development plan, to outline a comprehensive list of all required subsidies for each funding partner, both near and long term. We've hosted a public meeting in December of 2024 to share the preliminary results of the service development plan, and that recording of that meeting is available for you on our website. I appreciate the opportunity to support the Senate bill this morning, and we'll stand for questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Next, we'll have Zach Pistoria, Director of Kansas Chapter of the Sierra Club. Zach, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Zach Pastora, proud lobbyist and new director for the Kansas chapter of Sierra Club. We're nearly 5,000 members across the state. And here for you to talk about the environmental benefits of this bill. And so to that end, we hope you'll get on board with Senate Bill 86. There's a lot of reasons, as was mentioned: economic development, business opportunity, but I would specifically want to draw on the environmental advantage of passenger rail. You can look at both the Department of Energy and Amtrak sustainability report that show that comparing transportation options of all the various transportation, air, cars, trucks, buses, the average per passenger fuel economy is best achieved by rail because of high ridership, low drag, and more efficient propulsion. And they estimate 34% more energy efficient than domestic air travel, with 72% less emissions and air pollution, 46% more energy efficient than traveling by car over long distances, 83% less emissions. So in our view, we've always supported passenger rail for saving energy, using less land, cutting noise, reducing air pollution. We'll say that it stimulates compact development patterns and more concentrated infrastructure to lessen city sprawl and land disturbance. There's a number of other advantages, but happy to be at your service for any environmental issues going forward, and hope you support this bill for all the broad benefits of Kansas. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Next, we'll have Randy Frazier, City Manager of the City of Ark, Kansas City, Ark City, I guess. Randy, welcome committee.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. Along with the other things that you'll hear, obviously, Arc City will benefit greatly from this. We'll have a stop there. We have a community college that has numerous international students that could use the Heartland Flyer to arrive in Arc City. We have some international businesses, with Creekstone being owned by a Japanese firm. The biggest thing for us that we see as a benefit will be with Etzanoa. We're currently building a visitor center for Etzanoa, and if you don't know what that is, it was discovered that the Arc City site was home to a Native American community of about 20,000 people in the 1600s. They've been finding artifacts for years on this, and the WSU archaeologists have been studying this and developing the story. So we'll have a visitor center that should attract people from all over the world eventually to see that, and having this type of transportation available for those folks to come in will be a big benefit to our area and with tourism and economic development. So with that, all the other things you're going to hear today I support as well, but we are a big supporter of this, so thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Next, we'll have Ty Drago, Director and Chairman of SMART. Ty, welcome committee.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee, for having me here. My name is Ty Dragu. I'm the Director of Smart Transportation in the state of Kansas. We represent approximately 6,000 active and retired railroad employees. So I'm going to talk about the jobs aspect and the railroading aspect to this. I was kind of nervous when Deborah said she was going to expand on her testimony, so I'm going to summarize mine and be quick. The system is already built. The line is already there. So I've had a lot of questions about what needs to be built. It's there already. So this is just for operational funding and support to make sure that Amtrak comes in. We're the ones that run the trains, right? We see what this does to communities. We see how this helps people. Things that I'd like you to think about. Hunters. We have tons of hunters that ride Amtrak because they can't take their weapons with them on the plane usually. If they're not driving, they get in groups and get on trains. Boy state, girl state, scouts, huge groups, large families. It's a great way of slowing life down and traveling leisurely. It's something, especially with ADA, you see people that don't get around as well or elderly, just need a slower pace, more room to get around. The train is the best way to move them across the state and across the nation. For every TY&E job on a passenger rail operation, a TY&E is trainman, yardman, and engineman. That's the crew on the train. There are 4.2 auxiliary jobs associated with those jobs. So you're looking at a net plus 6 jobs for every conductor engineer on that locomotive. One other question I did hear as I've been discussing with some of you about this is it established for PTC? For those of you that don't know what PTC is, it's positive train control. The answer is yes. That line is set up and ready to go for it. So we're ready to go. We want to work it. We want to move Kansas. We want to get people to and from where they need to go conveniently and leisurely. And we ask that you support Senate Bill 86. And when it comes to any railroading or operational questions you have about this, let me know. I stand for questions. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ty. Next, we'll have Mike Steben, Leavenworth County. Mike, welcome committee.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to, thank you. I am here today representing myself as a county commissioner, but I want to encourage you to support Senate Bill 86, which will continue the funding of the expansion of rail passenger service in Kansas. The legislation will connect Kansas passenger service between Newton, Kansas, and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area for the first time since 1979, when Amtrak discontinued the Lone Star service. The current Southwest Chief train will soon be able to offer a connection to Oklahoma and Texas. This important connection will be a step forward in Kansas and allow future rail passenger extension opportunities with possible daylight service between Kansas City and Oklahoma City as we progress with possible future growth. The economic impact studies from other states, including Missouri and North Carolina, demonstrate that expansion of rail can reap huge economic development opportunities for communities along the route. Expansion with additional trains being added in the future will allow more and more passengers to turn to an alternative, convenient, comfortable, timely, and efficient mode of travel. In addition, the extension of additional Amtrak services in the future can also help to serve as a lifeline to our rural communities. I don't know if you received a copy of the synopsis of the economic impact of Missouri, but I'll just read a couple things from there. 450 jobs for Missouri, 35.2 million in labor income, 122.6 million in economic activity, 11.3 million in federal, state, and local funding. They also carried 172,000 passengers, and 82% of Missourians are within 60 miles of a rail terminal. 21.8 million in hotels, 25.3 million in food and sightseeing, over 800 jobs created, 30 million in labor income, 86 million in economic activity, and 11 million in federal, state, and local tax revenue. This is in Missouri from their economic impact. We'd like to get an economic impact here in Kansas, which we don't have at this point. But you will see this will create an opportunity to build infrastructure. In the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years, what's happened in Kansas with rail? Infrastructure has gone away. We don't even have the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe line. The line from Atchison to Topeka is ripped up. Folks, to build a strong economy in Kansas, to get our state where we can have jobs for our kids in the future, we've got to have connectivity, we've got to have transportation, we've got to have infrastructure. The infrastructure's been going away. Here we have an opportunity to get up and running with a lot of help at 80-20 match. We should not turn down this opportunity. This is an important thing for Kansas. And I do also have a letter signed by all 5 of our commissioners. So we'd appreciate your consideration, and this is very, very important for the future. I don't think we should think lightly of it, because it does enhance our transportation network, which has not been being enhanced for many years. And we have many, look at our counties losing population. I don't remember how many counties it is that have been losing population, but this is a way to tie them back in. So I'd appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much for letting me be here today.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we'll have Mark Corderstone.
Close.
I
Close.
I butchered ties, so butcher your.
I have a friend that sent me a congratulations for my birthday. Had it in there as corrosion. And I said, I answer to that too. Thank you, Chairman Billinger and members of the committee. My name is Mark Corriston. I serve on the board of directors for the Northern Flyer Alliance, and I respectfully present this proponent statement in support of SB 86. The Northern Flyer Alliance, of which I'm a board member, represents over 60 cities, county commissions, and civic organizations in Oklahoma and Kansas. Representatives from several Alliance communities are with us today, and the written testimonies and letters of support from them and others in the packet before you are just a sample of the extremely widespread regional support for this project. In simple terms, the train will run about 200 miles further each day and connect with the east and westbound Southwest Chief trains. It's a perfect connection, and it really needs to be developed. SB 86, a statute established that establishing an intercity passenger rail service and making transfers annually into the passenger rail revolving fund, is the heart of this legislation. The fiscal note for a 2-year, $5 million annual transfer to the passenger rail revolving fund is of extremely important need this year. It'll provide for the future operational funding that must be in place when the Amtrak Heartland Flyer extends operations in about 4 years. The Heartland Flyer is one of 64 corridor ID and development projects across the country. This is a program being run by the Federal Railroad Administration. At this time, key planning and development processes are slightly ahead of schedule. Passage of this bill will ensure that the federal-state partnership that involves Kansas and Oklahoma maintains its place in the project pipeline. This will also ensure that the $500 million grant package provided by the Federal Railroad Administration remains deliverable over the next 4 years. One last point. The Heartland Flyer extension will directly transfer 14 Kansas legislative districts and impact another 30 districts in south central Kansas. Construction alone promises an important economic boost for our Kansas City, Wichita, and the region. In closing, we urge passage of SB 86. The fiscal note that is included with this that will provide $5 million annually to the Passenger Rail Revolving Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Committee, I'd point out we have written only, not only on the first page, but also there's a second page that has written only. Are there any opponents here today for this bill? Seeing none. Any neutrals? Seeing none. Committee will go ahead and do questions at this time. Do you have questions? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe Deborah or Mark is best suited to answer this. So currently the Southwest Chief arrives in Newton at 2 a.m. And my big question with this is we believe it to be a significant economic boom, yet I don't believe that Newton sees much economic value from the current stop at 2 a.m. in Newton. So would one of you guys be willing to answer the question of maybe what that would look like? Will it ever become a daytime route? Because that's when I think you see true economic benefit. I don't know that this running in the middle of the night, I just am not seeing it. So please help me understand it.
Sure. That last question you asked, that's the first one I'll address. Could you say it again, though? Because there was more after that.
Yeah, no problem. Specifically, you know, I don't see much economic benefit around that, the 2 or 3 a.m. arrival and departure time. And currently, my assumption is the Heartland Flyer is going to intersect with the Southwest Chief at 2 in the morning.
Yes.
So how are we quantifying this economic benefit that everybody testifies to for something that's happening at that time in the morning, and will that ever change?
Newton, Kansas is the highest boarding and departure railway station in Kansas. And it's part of that is because the two Southwest Chiefs arrive at approximately the same time at 2 a.m. Bringing the Heartland Flyer north from Fort Worth, Texas, will allow the transfer of passengers on and off. And the timing is ideal for that because those passengers that board and alight in Newton will be heading south to Fort Worth, Texas, where in the afternoon of the next day at approximately the same time, Amtrak's Texas Eagle trains meet up in the same capacity. The expected ridership initially, and this is in the soon-to-be-developed service development plan, Corey Davis can correct me if I get this wrong, the initial ridership increase is 33,000. Everywhere that there has been new service introduced by Amtrak, the first year's numbers are often far eclipsed by the actual ridership. And because of this connection, it's between the two cities, Fort Worth and Newton, we expect it to achieve everything that's promised. I have a lot of facts. I'm just trying to pick the ones that are the most relevant. The economic profile of this train has been validated by Amtrak for years, and they will be at the next caucus meeting that we have on February 26th, and they'll speak to what their expectations for the success of this train. Is anything else?
No, if I may, Mr. Chair, maybe at February 26th, I can ask more in-depth questions because I still, again, see this arriving in Newton at 2 a.m. I'm trying to justify the real economic benefit to the state of Kansas if we're a transfer hub at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I really want the information. I really want to get behind it. I just need to understand it.
You also mentioned what's the prospects for daytime service. We need to bridge this gap of 200 miles. Once we have that in place, running a second frequency from Fort Worth to Chicago or Kansas City on an opposite schedule will dovetail nicely for operations. And that is, there's already a white paper on that exists, but we can't present the white paper for a proposal like that until the Heartland Flyer is up and running. And we're close to doing that if we get an affirmative vote from this committee.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Ty, if you wouldn't mind coming up, I think Ty's got a little additional information for you.
Senator, if you would, I might take a stab at that. So, and I could tell you what we see on the train. We got to think, we got to put ourselves in the mode of travel of we are not in a hurry versus getting on an airplane at 2 o'clock in the morning. So when we see people in Newton get on a train at 2 in the morning, they've got a sleeper car. They go down to the lounge, get maybe a drink, nightcap. They go turn in for the night. They're planning on, that's the hotel, right? That's the hotel as they're making it to their destination. So we really got to kind of think about this train and those meets in that kind of context. So when you're planning a trip and you're looking at those station departure times, a lot of families, you know, we do hear the grousing about, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay, well, where's our sleeper car? That's over here. We got a bed made up for you. You're ready to go. Do you guys need something to drink? When you plan train travel going to the West Coast or East Coast, it's a 2 or 3 day thing. And that's part of the experience, right? That's part of what they're after. They don't want to go through the hustle and bustle of that airport security, and we got to be there at 6 a.m. to get on that 6:30 a.m. flight. It's the experience of the travel. So hopefully that answers your question a little better.
Senator Owens.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that, Ty, because I don't know that I've ever traveled that way. I'm in a hurry to get somewhere all the time, and maybe that's just inherent with what we do here. So thank you for that explanation. I do appreciate it.
One of the best things, like with my family, so I got 4 kids, part of the vacation for my kids is getting on that train. They get in their bunks, you know, they're excited. I got top bunk, I got low bunk. We'll go down the dining car. Okay, here's your bag of chips, here's your pop. We'll go turn on a movie. It's a moving hotel. So when you think of it that way, that's a really good way to put it in context. Okay.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I got 4 or 5 questions. I'm learning here, so don't think I'm against this, you know, on what I ask you here. First thing, it would be like the federal funds, this 80-20 match somebody mentioned. What's an update on that? Is there any chance that the new administration, with us being $36 trillion in debt, could cut that off? I just wonder if you guys have heard any rumbles on that or concerns about that part.
I'll take a stab at it. Vice President J.D. Vance is a strong supporter of passenger rail and rail legislation. So I think anyone that stands up here and tells you they have a crystal ball and they know what the Trump administration is going to do,
Good luck.
good luck. But what I do know is the proof is in the receipts, at least with the vice president. Donald Trump, when he was president, he was a strong advocate of some Amtrak pieces of legislation and rail safety legislation. So the record tends to steer that way. And I believe, especially with his transportation secretary, the current transportation secretary is a strong proponent of rail issues and passenger rail. It looks good. I hope it continues to go that way.
Senator Fagg.
Ty, you'd be the perfect probably one for this one too. I did ride a train with my family probably 40 years ago from Kansas City to Chicago for the experience. We haven't been on it since, so it concerns me that we get a flash on this and then what happens after that. So that's a thought that crosses my mind. But at one time, we had a passenger train that went through Kansas, and then they stopped, and it was because they were losing money. So what's different today than it was then?
So I think, and again, I'm going to answer it from what I see from riders, and I'm going to put my personal experience in it. 40 years ago, when you got on a plane, you're getting a prime rib dinner. You weren't going through security. You weren't going through the hustle and bustle like you are today. And the ticket prices were not outrageous. It was very convenient. The airways were not plugged like they are today. And I think, too, you have a generational thing going on. And I see this, too, with our passengers. A younger generation is slowing down. And what I mean by that, they are, and I think this committee is well knowledgeable of this, they aren't necessarily concerned with, getting the 40 hours a weekend. They're concerned with, I want my lifestyle to be relaxed and as chill as possible, right? So we see that with a lot of our ridership. And I think the idea of train travel is switching over to that narrative, because you have a plane ticket today out of Kansas City, $400 to go to Chicago. I can get on Amtrak and it will take me almost as much time going through security, parking and everything at the Kansas City airport for $70. And I can eat a nice meal in the dining car. I can get up, move around, get a drink. I think it's lifestyles and the type of generational wants are at play at that.
Senator Frag.
What type of contingent liabilities currently and in the future do we have on this? So we put the 5 million in, the next 5, what are we committing to down the road?
That might be a Deborah or Mark question when it comes to the money.
You can pull that down.
Thank you. So the most recent estimation for operational support per year is, I think, like 3.5 million. By 2029, it'll be something like 4 million. We see this as honestly small potatoes, because the economic impact, the tax revenue generation will fund that. So as I was sharing before, my figures were about twice as high as Mr. Stevens. That's because my figures were based on 2 trains a day, which is what the Missouri River Runner is right now. When the legislature learned that at 1 train a day, which is what they cut it down to, because they were thinking in terms of, okay, this is a small, this is not something that we think is going to make money for the state, I'll put it that way. That it's a problem and it's a commitment that will not be able to continue. But when they learned that the sales tax revenue more than paid for the operational support of the train, it goes to the general fund, right? When people are paying sales tax, it goes to the general fund. That can easily be allocated to other categories, such as the revolving fund that is dedicated to passenger rail. So it's not a matter of ticket prices where you make money. It's the return in the community where taxes are generated that provides the return that pays for the train. And that's really how most forms of transportation are paid for. It's the economic impact, it's the commerce that takes place, that generates revenue, that people pay taxes on their income. All of those types of things, those types of taxes go back to the state. So when the Missouri legislature learned that getting rid of this train was going to cost them money, they restored the second frequency, and it speaks for itself. I mean, right now, Missouri is involved in trying to expand ridership. Once they learned what it was doing for their state, they did another study about how we can increase ridership, because this is pretty cool. We're making more money in tax revenues than it costs to operate the train. The railroad operations manager, Brian Ross, for the state of Missouri, made a trip to Maine and rode on the Downeaster and talked to the executive director of the Downeaster. They have several trains a day, and they plan to expand. At about 5 trains a day, operational support goes away at the ticket counter because there's more times available for more people. So ridership goes up. The more ridership goes up, the more economic impact that you have. Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
I have one more thing to add. Sure. To address your question, one thing that none of us have mentioned so far is some of the mechanics of the corridor ID program that the Federal Railroad Administration has designed this for. As I mentioned, there are 64 projects across the country. Each and every one of them, when they begin operations, the first year of financial support is discounted 90%. Second year is discounted 80%, goes for 5 years before the state assumes the full, and in our case, about $3.4 million annually before we assume that full financial responsibility. This is one of the most generous federal programs that states can take advantage of right now. We don't really want to be left out, and I just wanted to add that. And then there's another statement I want to make to Senator Owens. It isn't just Newton that will be benefiting. It's Wichita, Arkansas City, and about 6 other cities in northern Oklahoma. All of them are going to benefit from the transfer of passengers, not all of them at 2 a.m. It'll be earlier than that.
Senator Frag.
Got 2 more questions, I'll go ahead.
Yes.
And this kind of goes back to, we talk about economic development, and then that's what we all want. And the sales tax part, well, a lot of times it's local sales tax. So I look at this and say, well, if it's such a great deal, why doesn't the railroad want to do this? Why do we have to get involved? That's one. And 2, when you go along the line, I would think each of the cities that's going to benefit from this ought to have a part of this too. So you might react to that.
Far be it to speak for the railroad. The railroad, and they were in a meeting during Railroad 101 for the members that are on the Transportation Committee meetings in here. This was brought up, and they did say, we're not against it. We just want to make sure that if we have passenger trains on our freight railways, that they're adequately maintained, stations are maintained. They don't want to get into the issue of having to maintain ADA compliance and things like that at stations. So, and I know there's probably some other things, but I know the chair of Senate Transportation's here. That was brought up. So I think the railroad's primary objective is to move freight. That's, as long as nothing messes with that, I think they're okay with it.
Senator Frag.
Final question. When we talk infrastructure, I think today how much we got invested in our roads, a lot. I think about the airports that the cities around have that they support big time, and probably buses, I don't know to what level at that. So my question is that you have this mix of people moving today, and you're going to have these new people come in. Are they going to take away from these other places that could possibly hurt the revenues with what we've already got on infrastructure?
To answer that, again, there's no question when it comes to bang for your buck, rail is, bar none, the most cost-effective way. I think you can build a mile of rail in some places in flat Kansas for $500,000. You build a mile of 4-lane highway, we're getting it north of 20 million, right? It comes down to the type of people that travel. We're talking about passenger rail. So I think when it comes to the business clientele and the people like, I have a deadline. I need to be in Chicago at 6 a.m. and I'm in my office this evening. You're flying. So I think you're reaching the people that I was discussing earlier. you're not taking away from current modes of transportation because they're not using them. ADA is a big one we see. Hunting groups is a big one we see. They're not using airlines. They're not getting on airplanes. They're not getting on buses. So I don't think we're taking away. We're expanding access to citizens in Kansas, and that's what this is all about.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Petty.
Senator, last year, tomorrow, Homer Nicholson, who's the mayor of Ponca City, Oklahoma, was here before the Senate Transportation Committee, and he spoke to the situation in their city. They would be a stop on the Heartland Flyer. In recent years, they've lost their bus service and they've lost their airport. And the only way in and out of their town, which they say is a transportation desert, is by automobile. They have put up money to rehab their station. I think they have a $2 million initial investment in it. And so your question of, are the cities willing to support this with skin in the game? Yes, they are. I think our Kansas City, Mr. Frazier, you can speak to this point also. And Deborah, did you have something to say?
Mike, would you?
Yeah, our investment will be the station in the city. That'll be on us, and that's something that we're willing to do.
Senator Petty.
Sorry. You probably can answer this. I was going to ask Mark, but I know that there's the request, a part of the bill is the $5 million that would come and be put into the rail fund. And Mark, you said that, or if I misunderstood this, tell me I'm wrong, that the first 2 or 3 years that the feds would not be expecting that much from us. So how is that then how would that fund be used then?
It'll be earning interest until it's needed. So there's a grant that is available, and we're told that Amtrak and KDOT plan to apply for that grant. It's a 6-year step down where the federal government puts 90% in the first year, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, and then we're on our own at that point. So I believe Corey estimated that at $5 million, once the service begins, we won't need any additional operational funding because of that. So in the meantime, that money is earning interest. Well, one of the main reasons why we're looking for this funding now is because if there is a cutback in federal funding, there probably still will be a program. And so competition will be even stiffer. And those states that have some skin in the game will be at the top of the list, will be more competitive. The other thing I wanted to, did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
You did. So you have an estimate of how much that's going to grow over the next 5 years?
Those dollars? Mm-hmm. I did last year. I did a spreadsheet on that. I wanted to answer Senator Fagg's question about taking people away from the highways and the airports and all the investment. The Service Development Plan of 2011 has, and also the Texas Transportation Institute Economic Impact Study of 2010 determined that 28 to 30% of ridership on the Heartland Flyer is induced. In other words, those are people that wouldn't make the trip except for the train. That is really high. Average for Amtrak is 5 to 12 across the nation. So at 30%, that's indicative of a transportation desert for a lot of people. So it's not going to be taking anything away. Thank you.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we are fortunate today to have the city manager from York City here today. And so I'd like to ask him a question about his plans. If
if you would take the microphone. So what time will the train hit Arc City?
My understanding, it's in the midnight to 1 a.m. timeframe.
Okay? And at that time, what do you, and I'm going back to Senator Owen's question, what is the economic impact to Arc City for having the train there?
Well, again, our hope is it'll bring in tourists and things of that nature. Again, yeah, at that time of morning, there's not going to be a lot of businesses open and that type of thing, but the folks that arrive there for the activities that are within the community, we hope that they'll be there for a few days, enjoying the tourism and the other things that are going on in the area, and leave their tax dollars in. So
Maybe this isn't you can answer this, but of the people that are riding that train to get in there at 1 o'clock or midnight or whatever time it is, how many get off or how many are still asleep?
yeah,
You don't know. We don't know. So that's a concern that I would have for that. It's going to be a difficult study.
Yeah.
To find that out.
I know as a citizen living there in Arc City, and even when I was up north, to get to air travel, most of the flights leave at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. We would have to get up and leave our homes from Arc City, at 3 a.m. to get there in time so those types of things. So if we're as a citizen traveling on rail from Arc City, I don't see it as a big difference. We're still have to get up early and travel to the airport and go through all that. So, so there's that aspect of it as well. But
Thank you. Yeah. One more question, if I may.
Yes.
And I don't know who's going to answer this, but the cars themselves, I was fortunate enough to ride a rail service, and you sat in a nice car. You got like a dining room table you're sitting at. It's very nice. But I also was forced to ride in one in a foreign country. And I sat on my bags because there's no seats. It was a commuter train. These are not going to be that full, I hope.
Well, thank God for rules and regulations, right? No, every Amtrak passenger set we run has ample storage for baggage, and we do run into people that, let's just have an honest conversation here. They're on the no-fly list. So that's how they move around in this country. So, our porters and our conductors will come through, hey, can we take your bag? And some people get very protective of it. We don't monkey with them. They don't monkey with us. But plenty of storage, and our goal is to make sure your trip is as comfortable as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be for Director Davis from Department of Transportation. On page 2, there is a sentence that says the Secretary shall provide funding for the cost of qualifying projects and provide operating support for, skipping a few words, operation of the service. So what is providing operating support for operation of the service? I don't mind building railroads, but why should we, well, just tell me what it's for first before I ask a question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's for operating costs to pay Amtrak to provide the service. So there's a cost to Amtrak to operate that train on the track. Whether it's fuel for the train, whether it's employees, there is a cost to Amtrak to provide that service on the route.
I understand there's a cost to Amtrak, but so taxpayers are going to be paying Amtrak for operating this rail service.
Correct. There are two types of Amtrak service. There's long distance, which is Amtrak pays for that. This would be a state-supported service, so taxpayer dollars would go towards the operating cost of that service.
Taxpayers in Montgomery County that may never use the service would be paying for a service. Does Amtrak not charge a fee?
Yes, they charge a fare, but it doesn't cover the entire operating cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Committee will, oh, sorry. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having this corridor ID, does that help us get grants for the improvement of the corridor itself, which helps freight and passengers?
Great question, Senator Peterson. Yes, And I'm glad you asked that. I'll clarify on how this program works. Currently, we're in the quarter ID program, which allows us the $500,000 I mentioned for planning efforts. Next, after that would be preliminary engineering and environmental review. That's also subsidized by the FRA. Beyond that, we would go into final engineering, construction, and then operations. All those have financial federal support through the FRA.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we have a little company down in Wichita, Boyne, and Spirit that use this rail corridor, and those improvements would help that freight move efficiently and a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you all for being here today. I will close our hearing on Senate Bill 86. And committee, we're going to have a hearing. And first off, thank you all for being here today. Appreciate all you taking time out of your schedules and coming in to answer questions. Okay, next we're going to have a hearing on Senate Bill 125, authorizing the payment of certain claims against the state. We'll have a staff overview with Molly Pratt, Kansas Legislative Research Department. Molly, welcome committee.
Good morning, Chairman Billinger and members of the committee. My name is Molly Pratt. I'm a fiscal analyst with the Legislative Research Department.
Molly, excuse me, just one minute. Committee, I just, especially for the new members, we do this every year. This is like a shell for the omnibus bill is what it is. So please continue, Molly. Sorry.
For those of you who don't know, the Joint Committee on Special Claims Against the State exists to hear claims proposed to be paid by the state, which an agency cannot lawfully pay except by an act of appropriation. Generally, most claims are brought by inmates at state correctional facilities against the Department of Corrections, though a handful of claims are brought each year by private citizens against various state agencies. If you'll turn to the KLRD memo, you'll find a brief overview of what the committee did this session, this previous interim, and what the Senate Bill 125 authorizes. So this interim, the Joint Committee on Special Claims Against the State recommended payment of claims totaling $6,430.04, all from the SGF in fiscal year 2025. Senate Bill 125 would not increase total state expenditures as all claims are directed to be paid from existing resources. Over the course of 4 meetings during the 2024 interim, the committee heard 63 claims, including 57 brought against the Kansas Department of Corrections or correctional facilities. Although the Joint Committee has the authority to review claims for motor fuel tax refunds, no claims of this nature were submitted to the Kansas Department of Revenue. And you'll note that from November 2nd, 2023 through November 1st, 2024, KLRD received and processed over 110 potential claims against the state. Of this amount, 63 claims met the statutory guidelines to be heard by the committee. Senate Bill 125 directs the Senate Bill 125 includes the approval of 5 claims that were brought against 3 correctional facilities and 2 state agencies. The Joint Committee recommended payment of those 5 claims for a total of $6,430. Section 2 includes the claims brought against correctional facilities. The Joint Committee's recommendation in this section totals $230.04. Perry Esley Jr. alleges that various items, including a fan and a lamp, were missing from his cell due to correctional staff failing to secure the cell. The agency states that the claimant cannot prove the loss was a direct result of staff negligence, and the Joint Committee recommended partial payment of the claim in the amount of $50. Kendall Golston alleges that several items were missing from his property stored at the admissions and discharge area of the facility due to staff negligence. And the agency stated that the claimant could not prove that the loss was a direct result of staff negligence. And once again, the Joint Committee recommended partial payment of the claim in the amount of $30.04. Franklin Harrison, an inmate at Larned State Correctional Facility, alleges that correctional staff in the mailroom of the correctional facility sent his New Balance tennis shoes to the wrong address. The agency stated that the claim should be denied because of failure to exhaust all administrative remedies. And the Joint Committee recommended partial payment of the claim in the amount of $50. And finally, against the Lansing Correctional Facility, Dexter Robinson alleges that several items were taken from his cell by another resident inmate who extorted the claimant. The agency stated to the Joint Committee that although the claimant was extorted by another resident inmate out of various property, the claim should be denied because the claimant cannot prove the loss was a direct result of staff negligence. And once again, the Joint Committee recommended partial payment in the amount of $100. Sections 3 and 4 are, well, I'm going to combine the summary for sections 3 and 4 because both sections direct payment for one claim brought against two agencies, specifically KDADS and KDHE, for failure to timely process a request for home and community-based services from the time period of August 2nd, 2023 through October 5th, 2023. Hillside Village is an assisted living and nursing facility. According to the claim, which was brought on behalf of Hillside Village by the person who owned the facility during this period, a claim for a resident's HCBS eligibility was submitted to the state on June 15th, 2023. The claimant alleges that due to delays and errors, the resident was not made eligible for HCBS services until October 5th, 2023. Hillside Village repeatedly asked KDHE to correct the date of eligibility for HCBS services to reflect the resident's move-in date of August 2nd. The claimant further alleged to the Joint Committee that this request was repeatedly denied by KDHE due to a policy against backdating a person's eligibility. Both KDADS and KDHE stated in their response to the claim that it should be denied for failure to exhaust all administrative remedies. In the written response to the Joint Committee, KDHE noted that on June 15th, 2023, a third-party contractor for KDADS input an improper code into the claimant's submission for HCBS services. Both agencies further stated in the written response that had the third party properly coded the application, an issue may not have occurred. And the Joint Committee recommended full payment of the claim in the amount of $6,200. Section 5 of the bill states that each claimant must sign a waiver releasing the state from any potential liability prior to payment being made. And Section 6 states that the bill would take effect upon publication in the Kansas Register. And with that, I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Molly. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We have no proponents. There's no one here as a proponent. Seeing none. Opponents? Seeing none. Neutral? Seeing none. We will close the hearing on Senate Bill 125. Committee, now that we have had a hearing on this bill, we just need to take final action on it, and it'll just be something that we'll take care of later. Senator Fagg.
If you're ready for a motion.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move Senate Bill 125 favorably out of committee.
Motion is second by Senator Alley. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, excuse me, Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry, I already had my microphone on. I apologize to staff. Is this something that could be put on the consent calendar?
No, it'll be used later, and the contents will be used in, taken care of in another way.
Well, I understand, but that will be after it passes the Senate, correct?
No, it doesn't have to go over the floor, does it, Donna? Okay. We do not have to amend it, so if you would like to amend the motion to put it on the consent calendar, we can do that.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a substitute motion that we pass Senate Bill 125 favorably and put it on the consent calendar.
We have a motion and a second by Senator Fagg. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Committee, that concludes our work for today. Thank everybody for being here.